welcome back to the program. This is Module 6 for Strategy Development. This is one of the modules that I think is most important because this can become the bedrock for you making the transition from an amateur retail trader to a professional one. So what or why should we worry about strategy development? Well, there's two main reasons why this critical step means the difference between winning and losing in trading. Well, it should be obvious that continuous improvement works. Continuous improvement works regardless of what business that you're into. If you start off with what your goals are, institute that through some kind of rules, get some kind of results, and then make corrections to it. If you do this continuously, then you cannot help but to spiral this whole system upwards in terms of efficiency. Now, I know that we haven't really talked about mindset yet, and I keep making these sort of vague references to mindset and subconscious mind, things like that. But this is one of the most subtle things, that this strategy development process can be the bridge towards you becoming that professional trader. And you don't have to know anything about mindset. You don't have to understand anything about neurolinguistic programming. This whole process will sort of take care of that for you if you apply it purposely. And what you're trying to do is that through all of this effort, all of this continuous process effort, what you're doing is you're sending continuous subtle messages to your subconscious mind that, hey, this is something that we're taking seriously, and this doesn't represent risk to you. So the subconscious mind is going to block anything, and it's going to go back on your default dinosaur brain response if your trading represents real harm to you. And so your job is to change that perception to the subconscious mind. And there's no better way than going through a strategy development cycle again and again and again and again. So let's get into the points behind this. Step one is that we need to determine some goals. We have to start by shooting at something. And this is where a lot of people get hung up because they can't even get out of the gate. Don't over-engineer it. Don't overthink it. Just put a stake in the ground. It doesn't matter if you're wrong to begin with. That's the whole point behind the process, is that you will iterate on that. So just start by setting up something that's going to be a realistic goal for yourselves. And maybe you don't even know what's realistic at this point. Maybe there's so many messages bombarded at you from so many different sources that, hey, you make $1,000 every single day. Well, if you don't have the skills and if you don't have the risk management skills on top of that, you will find that goal to be impossible to achieve. And you'll quickly find that out. And hopefully before you lose that first $1,000. So step one, define your goals, give yourself something to shoot for. Don't overthink it. Just get a stake in the ground. That leads us to step two, is that if you have some kind of goals, you've got to execute those in the market through some type of rules. Again, this is where a lot of people can get stuck because maybe they don't have the experience to be able to create trading rules that have edge to them. Remember, we're not trying to set up rules for several different strategies. This is all around your one thing. Remember that one thing. We're going to keep things simple. We're going to focus on one strategy to begin with. So here are some elements to that trading plan. First of all, I would suggest that you rent to begin. Consider renting somebody else's plan. Now, just kidding when I say rent it. You're obviously going to copy it from some kind of source. This can be from an article, a book, a mentor, someone else that has attained success. Understand what they consider the edge to be for the trading entry, and then copy those trading rules to begin so you can begin the process. It's all about getting started. You need action to get started. And then from there are the entry rules, as we might expect. Now, this is where a lot of people just stop as they focus on entering the trade. They don't focus on managing and exiting the trade. But the point I want to bring to your attention for entry rules is that there should be as little ambiguity as possible to this. It should be almost a binary, either a red light, green light, go, no go decision, not this kind of twist yourself into the wind and try 13 different ways to look at this and not really understand whether or not you should go or not. It should be as simple as possible. From there, trade management can kick in. Trade management deals with whether or not anything needs to be done during the whole time of the trade. So if you're in a trade, does something need to be done to that trade to manage it? Now, for many of you, this is going to be a very simple thing. If you're just trading directional futures or spot currency, something like that, you don't really need to manage the trade. It's either you're either in or out of the trade. However, with some option positions, sometimes you need to take intermediary steps to manage risk, or perhaps peel off some of the position, or maybe roll the position out depending on what's happening. That's trade management. And then, of course, there's the converse of the entry rules, which is exit rules. Each strategy should have defined exit rules, which are just as clear, just as binary as the entry rules, leaving as little as possible to the trader's discretion. And then, of course, there is the possibility that you have multiple plans. If you get good at this, you can aggregate different trading plans into an overall trading plan. But again, my recommendation to you is that you focus on just getting good with your one thing to get started. Now, if we create a system with goals and then execute those in the market through rules, we are going to get some results, are we not? So for each trade taken, you need to create some type of structure to gather and track your results. I like spreadsheet tools for analysis, which I'll show in a minute here, as well as written journals for mindset review that you can go back and say, what was I thinking this day? What was my frame of mind during that particular day? But this is a tracking sheet, which you'll see different examples of in this module. And the way I like to structure these is, of course, each one of these rows is a specific trade. And what I'm going to do is execute list my entry rules in this area. And as I look through this, there's only one exit rule here for this particular strategy. All of these are filters for entry. This is just the one. Hey, did I exit correctly? Sometimes you'll have kind of half and half, and you'll see an example of that the exit plays much more of a factor in these. Now, after that, we just have results. All of this is just results, and then comments on that. So we have entry price, exit price, MAE, which is maximum adverse excursion, meaning that if you took a long trade, how far did it pull back against you? Or maximum favorable excursion, if you took a long trade, how far did it go in your direction? So what we're always trying to do is to get something where we have a big ratio here between favorable versus unfavorable price movement. That means that you're getting into the right entries for this. So is it a good wave? Did I have more favorable than unfavorable movement? So I can track these types of things where I can see, was this a good entry? Did I follow all of my rules? And in this case, I didn't follow the rule for this one. I didn't follow the rule for this one. So we'll see later how that tabulates up. And then what we'll find is that we're going to keep tabulating these sums down here, which will make a difference when we get into Pareto analysis. Something else that I like to keep is understanding what the profit factor is. A profit factor is your gross profits divided by the gross losses for all of the trades. And so ideally, you're going to run something over 1.0, and 1.5 will be a great place to shoot for. And that is going to be irrespective of your win rate. The win rate really doesn't matter that much. A lot of us like to track the win rate just to see how we're doing. Obviously, 100% win rate would be great, but it's unrealistic. Doesn't really matter that much if we have a positive profit factor, all things considered. So this is the way that we're going to track results, but it doesn't really mean anything until we take those results and we follow into some corrections with them. And this is really the meat of what we're talking about here. This is the key to everything, tracking trades without analyzing root cause errors. Maybe you find this stuff to be tedious. Certainly a lot of people do. Oh, this is boring. Actually, the corrections part of it, this is the most exciting thing. And this is what every professional trader will do. So we'll start off with a tracking sheet. This is the same one as before. Again, you should separate entry from your execution or exit rules. right? So I'll show a different one in just a second here. And this is the magic. This is where we get into Pareto analysis. So here's a completely different strategy where you can see clearly that we've outlined different trading rules in this area here. And this is trading execution. So after we filtered out the entry of the trade, how well did we execute on actually entering and exiting the trade? And then here we have the results. And this is a slightly different manner of tracking them to give you some ideas. In this case, however, we do have a problem. We have a profit factor of 0.54. So for every dollar that we're putting into the system, we're getting 54 cents back, which is not that great. We can also see the average winning trade is $32. The average losing trade is 141. This is an example of a system that will continue to grind lower and lower and lower in terms of your trading capital. Now, the important thing here is all these red ones. These indicate errors as we have outlined in the plan. So for whatever reason, this trader is not following the plan and at least is doing the favor of scoring himself or herself to say, okay, I goofed here, or I jumped the gun, or I couldn't stop myself from entering. So we've tracked all of these entries and the errors associated with them. So in this case, if we add up, here's 2, here's 3, here's 1, 1, 3, 1, and then 4. So where a lot of people get stuck is they say, all right, I've got a losing strategy. I've only got a profit factor of 0.54. My losers are bigger than my winners. I'm winning 70% of the time, so I feel good about this, but this is the classic example of eating like a bird and crapping like an elephant. So how do I fix this thing? What do I do? And so what most people do is they try to fix it all at once. This is where Pareto analysis will come to save you by giving you some structure. Remember that Pareto analysis is kind of the 80% of the causes happen from 20% of the instances, or some kind of verbiage like that. So organizing the incidents from the tracking sheet, remember we had some with 3, some with 2, some with 1 with 4. And so that's 20% of the instances are coming from just one of this. 27% are coming from not following the profit target. In that case, it was shutting off the trade too soon, not letting your winners run. And so we can actually graph these out. This is called a Pareto histogram. And the way that we're supposed to follow this from here is, well, let me first speak that what most people try to do is, all right, I'm going to fix all of these all at once. No, don't do it that way. Choose one variable. And the variable that I would choose is the one that's making the biggest impact to your profits. So before you go through your next cycle, commit to fixing that one error. And so the idea is that you fix this one first as best you can, and then you try to work on these ones one at a time from the top down. Don't work from the bottom up. These ones don't matter. This is more noise than anything else. But if you can just fix a couple of these, you'll make a huge improvement in your profitability, certainly your profit factor. This is how we take a tracking sheet and turn it into continuous improvement through Pareto analysis. I do need to stress that one variable thing. There is a tendency to want to rush through corrections and try to fix everything at once. Only change one variable on the next cycle through, or perhaps the next few cycles through, until you see whether or not you're actually making an impact to reduce this most offending factor as close to zero as possible before you start to work purposely on the next one in line. That's the point of using the Pareto histogram and Pareto analysis. You got to keep repeating the cycle. You might think that you're done. Okay, I've set up goals, I've set up rules, I've gotten results, I've made corrections, I'm done. No, you're not done. This is just the very first cycle. You may want to go back to your goals and say, oh, okay, now I have a much better idea about what my goals should be. Now I can be a lot more realistic about setting these goals. And again, you don't have to be right the second time around. Maybe you won't get this right until 50 cycles through this, until you really understand how you can drive this. The point here is that professional traders never stop iterating their analysis because market conditions will change all the time. Instruments change all the time. Volatility changes all the time. There are going to be different factors that cause that Pareto analysis histogram to shift around slightly, irrespective of your own performance. So find a way to have fun with this, because this is really the key towards internalizing a strategy and making something yours. You can start out by renting somebody's rules, but through constant iteration, you'll eventually convince your subconscious mind that you thought of this strategy a long time ago and nobody else had anything to do with it. And that's truly the key towards successful trading. So have fun with this as you go through this. All right, in the next module, Module 7, we're going to be talking about actions that will definitely lose you money. So we're going to kind of cycle back here and tell you what not to do after telling you what to do. We'll see you there.